Picture Whitney Houston, the voice of a generation, perfectly poised, commanding stadiums and screens worldwide. But beneath that polished surface lurked a fierce intolerance for betrayal, disrespect, and exploitation. Whitney didn't feud for publicity. She hated when she was hurt, and sometimes the pain came from people who should have known better. From a marriage that devoured her soul, to a movie co-star who undercut her, to media figures who pried too deep, these 7 individuals ignited her wrath. Each story reveals a different kind of hurt or fear that pushed her toward silence, distance, or in rare moments, explosive confrontation. It wasn't about drama. It was about defense. It wasn't about gossip. It was about survival. And the stage was her sanctuary. She let only trusted voices in. So brace yourself, because if you think Whitney just smiled her way through life, wait till you hear about the voices she refused to let echo back. Whitney Houston's marriage to Bobby Brown was nothing short of a tempest. Unpredictable, raw, and deeply wrenching. Their electrifying chemistry fueled hit duets and sold-out tours, but behind closed doors lay emotional chaos. In her 2009 Oprah interview, Whitney condemned Brown's volatility. "He spit on me, in my face. That was pretty intense," she said, admitting she was very hurt, very angry. She recounted he slapped her once, and she retaliated, hitting him with a phone, drawing blood. Add addiction into the mix, and the picture darkened. Together, they fell deep into cocaine and marijuana use. Whitney described Brown as "my drug," saying they did nothing without each other. Their reality show, Being Bobby Brown, laid private turmoil bare. Brutal fights, public rants, and the private unraveling of a marriage in real time. Whitney filed for separation in 2006, finalizing their divorce in 2007. She withdrew from public life, not with a courtroom shocker, but with quiet dignity. "I went out for milk, never returned," she revealed to Oprah. No dramatic press blitz, just a woman reclaiming herself. For Whitney, forgetting Bobby wasn't erasure, it was self-preservation. She didn't hate him for fame, she hated him for the betrayal, the moments that crossed the line, the pain that stole her spotlight. But that was only the beginning of her hard-earned boundaries. Stick around, because the next person she distanced from was also in her career's spotlight, and it changed her forever. Whitney Houston made her acting debut in The Bodyguard, 1992, opposite Kevin Costner, an iconic pairing destined for fame. But behind the scenes, there was unexpected tension. Costner, both star and producer, insisted Whitney show up without an entourage. Fearful director Mick Jackson was intimidated by her star power. He promised to protect her, even calling himself her imaginary bodyguard on set. On one hand, his offer was a lifeline, a powerful man stepping in to ensure Whitney could shine without distraction. But on the other, it felt controlling, like he decided what conditions her career could grow in. Whitney, fiercely independent, bristled at that subtle assumption. She didn't need saving, she needed respect. Over time, their dynamic became complicated. The immense success of the film and soundtrack, like I Will Always Love You, cemented their on-screen chemistry. But off-camera, Whitney couldn't shake the undercurrent. Costner's protective tone felt like an overstep into her autonomy. After Whitney's tragic passing, Costner delivered a heartfelt 17-minute eulogy. Powerful, emotional, defiant of media rush. It reflected deep admiration, but despite the strong words, it couldn't erase the unease Whitney once felt. She never lashed out, she simply stepped away. She didn't need to label him enemy. She protected herself in silence. If you thought that buried tension was surprising, hold tight. Next, we're diving into a very public betrayal from one of her closest confidants. On the surface, Whitney Houston and Oprah Winfrey had the makings of a powerful friendship. Two black women who shattered ceilings, shaped pop culture, and commanded the world's attention. But behind the cameras, the trust between them began to fracture, and once it cracked, it never healed. It started with suspicion. Sharon Osbourne revealed that Whitney once accused Oprah of flirting with, or even trying to seduce, Bobby Brown at a VH1 event. Whether the claim was literal or exaggerated didn't matter. What mattered was how Whitney felt. Betrayed. Not just romantically, but personally. Oprah had been welcomed into her circle, and now she was on the outside. Then came the 2009 Oprah sit-down interview, Whitney's big return to the public eye. It was raw, emotional, honest, and deeply exposing. Whitney spoke about her drug use, her abusive marriage, and her fall from grace. Some saw the conversation as brave. Others whispered that Oprah crossed a line, that she'd used Whitney's pain to power ratings. After that, Whitney retreated. She never returned to Oprah's stage. She never mentioned her name again publicly. Her silence wasn't rage. It was withdrawal, protection, distance. To Whitney, vulnerability was sacred, and once it felt like a transaction, she shut the door, quietly but permanently. Just wait until you see what happens when it wears a microphone and a headline. If there was one thing Whitney Houston couldn't stand, it was being poked, prodded, and paraded like a circus act. And no one poked harder or louder than Wendy Williams. Wendy made a name for herself digging deep into celebrity drama. But when it came to Whitney, her obsession crossed a line. From calling her out on air for drug use, to publicly questioning her parenting and marriage, Wendy's radio jabs stung, and they were relentless. Then came the 2003 radio interview, the infamous showdown that lives online to this day. Wendy came in hot, asking Whitney about rehab, about Bobby, about drugs, about whether she was even clean. Whitney, she didn't hold back. "What you need to do is stop talking about people. If this were back in the day, I'd meet you outside," she snapped. Her voice, usually smooth and soaring, dropped to gravel. She was angry, controlled, fed up. Whitney didn't scream, she didn't cry, but the message was clear: you don't get to play with my pain, not for ratings, not for clout. After that, she never appeared on Wendy's platforms again. No follow-up, no reconciliation, just silence. Because Whitney didn't just reject gossip, she rejected the people who turned her struggles into entertainment. And if you think that feud was fiery, wait until you meet the woman Whitney once called her other half, and eventually her shadow. Before there was Bobby Brown, before the bodyguards and the tabloids, there was Robin Crawford, Whitney Houston's ride or die. Her closest friend, her protector, her first great love, according to Crawford's memoir. Their bond was unbreakable until the world got involved. In her 2019 book, A Song for You, Robin revealed that she and Whitney had a romantic relationship in the early days. It was tender, private, and ended quietly once Whitney's career took off. The pressure was too intense. Whitney's team, especially her mother, Cissy Houston, demanded she appear straight and marketable. So the relationship was erased, but not the love. Robin stayed by Whitney's side for years, through tours, stress, and the whirlwind rise to superstardom. But things changed when Bobby entered the picture. Tensions rose, fights broke out. Robin and Bobby couldn't stand each other. In the middle, Whitney, torn, tired, and losing control. Eventually, Robin left. Not with a scandal, not with a press release, just gone. Whitney never publicly acknowledged the depth of what they'd shared. When asked, she pivoted, deflected, laughed it off. But insiders say the silence wasn't hate, it was heartbreak. Robin had represented a version of herself that Whitney was never allowed to live fully. And that loss? It wasn't loud. It was devastating. But even that heartbreak couldn't match the public narrative that came next. Because the media tried to pit her against someone she never even had beef with. The media couldn't resist it. Whitney Houston versus Mariah Carey, two powerhouse vocalists, both stunning, both untouchable, both capable of shattering glass with a single note. It was the perfect headline. But to Whitney, it was just noise. Rumors of rivalry began in the early 90s when Mariah burst onto the scene. Critics called her the new Whitney. That label alone sparked tension, not between the women, but between fan bases and industry voices, hungry to crown a new queen. Then came When You Believe, their 1998 duet for the Prince of Egypt. People expected friction, diva clashes, behind-the-scenes drama. What they got? Two legends, one studio, and undeniable harmony. Mariah would later say, "We made a pact to not let the industry pit us against each other. We laughed about the rivalry, it wasn't real." Whitney didn't hate Mariah, she hated the game, the way the media built women up just to pull them apart, the way success couldn't be shared, it had to be fought for. So no, Whitney didn't roll her eyes at Mariah. She rolled her eyes at the system that demanded a catfight. Because real power doesn't compete, it collaborates. And Whitney, she never needed to prove she was the greatest, she was the standard. Whitney Houston didn't need to blast her enemies, she didn't need to feud in the press. Her silence, that was her message. Every person on this list challenged her peace. And every time she chose power over pettiness. Because when you're the voice, you don't shout back. You sing louder, you rise higher, and you walk away with grace. These weren't just grudges, they were battle scars, and Whitney wore them like armor. Thanks for watching. And remember, legends don't scream, they echo.